New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, welcome to Inclusive Church. I have missed you so much. Oh my goodness. It's good to travel, but it's also good to be home and to be back and to be with you. So my name is Tracy Brown. I'm so glad that you have joined me today, and we're going to talk a little bit about being inclusive in our church communities. Just in case you are seeing this for the very first time, I always try to remember to do a little bit of a framework of why this show is titled Inclusive Church. That while we are talking about ministries in New Thought spiritual communities, I'm purposely choosing the word church to remind us all that we know that the church is not a piece of property, right? It's the people who come together to learn and to practice spiritual principles, to support one another, to be in the process or in the work of integrating spiritual principles into their lives. And so I purposely have chosen to use church, not ministry, not spiritual communities, even though I may refer to those terms or use those terms throughout the course of this conversation. So that's number one. And then number two, the reminder that when I'm talking about what leaders do in our churches and leaders who are committed to being inclusive, I'm not only talking about ministers. And so please, when you hear the word leader, remember that everyone who is contributing to the way that a volunteer group works, or who is serving on the board, or who is showing up on a regular basis and contributing money, that they are the leaders in your community or in your church who you are relying upon to not only be inclusive and model what it means to be inclusive, but to bring others along as well. So welcome. I'm so glad that you have joined me. Absolutely feel free to put a hello and a where you're watching from in the chat. And as we go through the next 25 to 30 minutes, also feel free to add any comments in the chat or in the comment section, depending on which platform you are watching. And I can see we have people on Facebook and a couple of different pages. We have some people here who are on YouTube. And it looks like the LinkedIn feed is not working. It has a problem today. So we're going to remove it. Remove this destination from the stream. Yes. And it is gone. So, what is a theme today? Rewarding commitment. I have to stop and think. What was it that I was going to talk about today? Rewarding commitment. And I love this topic because so often when we are talking about inclusion, we talk about what people should be doing, and we talk about how people should be behaving, and we hardly ever talk about how do they know we value what they are doing? How do the people who are taking the risks, who are having the difficult conversations, how are we rewarding them and recognizing them for what they do? So as we are coming near the end of a calendar year and beginning to think about the next calendar year, I just want to plant this seed so that you can be thinking about how to recognize and reward people in 2026 if you're not already doing it. Now, there's something that's really important about this idea of rewarding the commitment that people show. It's very, very important that we think about what we are recognizing and rewarding. Often we make the mistake of rewarding activity instead of impact, or we reward lip service instead of the actual liberating actions and behaviors. So I want us to be very intentional when we think about what we want to recognize, what we want to reward, and how we want to recognize and reward people. So first and foremost, it won't surprise those of you who hang out with me on a regular basis. First and foremost, we want to be sure that we are rewarding and recognizing people who are integrating the commitment to inclusion, integrating our spiritual principles and our spiritual imperative in what they are doing and in how they are doing it. And so, in your community or your ministry or your church, if you've been doing this work, you have been reminding people consistently about what is the spiritual motivation, what is the spiritual imperative for being inclusive. So you don't want to then start rewarding people or recognizing people who are doing things just either on the surface, or what they have done in the last year has been primarily a reaction to, or some verbal reaction linking your inclusive, your commitment to inclusion to what's happening politically. Now, I'm not saying that you never want to do that. What I'm saying is that if you are reacting to something that is being talked about in the media or in your community from a political perspective, your job is to constantly and consistently bring back to the forefront the spiritual imperative. Example: a few years ago in my home spiritual community, there had been a series of deaths of Black men while they were in police custody or while they were being questioned by police. And this was happening, obviously, in the bigger world, in the bigger context. And every time this happened in my spiritual community, we would hold vigil. We would host a circle. We would light candles. We would bring people into a spiritual environment and really grieve together and recommit uh, to doing prayer and other work to change the consciousness that allowed for racism to continue to express itself in this way. And what was really good about that was we did keep going to, we know from a new thought and metaphysical perspective, it is the spiritual work that we do that heals, and it is the spiritual work that we do that sets a new demand upon the universe. It's that our prayers are causal in nature. And so if we had been planning to recognize anyone in that process, we would do it from that perspective. And I use that as an example because the focus then is on what we are doing as a spiritual community. And our focus is shifting the consciousness, but also attending to the grief and the healing that needs to happen among our members and our guests. So if we were going to recognize someone who maybe helped to set up this series of events over the course of the year, we wouldn't just say something like, oh, we're honoring Ann Smith because she organized candle lighting every time a Black man was killed. Because without adding the spiritual piece to it, then people will simply default to what they know and what they hear in the secular world about Black men being killed, unarmed Black men being killed. And so if you don't put it in there specifically and intentionally, people will default to what they hear in the news and what they see in their social media. And so we have to be very intentional. So instead, might sound something more like we want to honor and recognize and give gratitude to Ann Smith because she took action to help everyone in our church and everyone who came when we did vigils to help to shift the consciousness. And that is what we do in metaphysics. And so you come up with your own wording, but you have to be explicit in the recognition. So as some of you know, I don't have a guest today, and so this is really a toolkit Tuesday. The approach is what can you be thinking about and what is in your toolkit versus just describing and discussing activities and priorities and things that I have done or my guests have done. So we are 15 minutes in, and over the next 10 minutes, I just want to share with you some things to really think about. So if we are talking about rewarding the commitment, and a lot this year we've talked about making the commitment, but let's think forward to how might we want to reward the commitment. There are some visible and tangible ways to do that, and there's some less visible or intangible ways to do that. So let's talk for 5 minutes about some of the more intangible ways, just to keep in mind, because as you are thinking about recognizing different people, some of these ideas might really be helpful for you. So intangible meaning, maybe it's not where you may not be explicitly calling out one person for something they've done, or it may not be public, like during your annual awards event or program. And so some of the less visible ways that can really be appreciated by people are include things like simply well, let's start with just simply saying thank you. Like, how about that? Like going to individual people one on one. It's not public, but you're letting them know that you actually do recognize the contribution they are making. And not only do you recognize it, but you value it. And this is something that's not done nearly enough. So when you do that, people actually get it, that you see them, you see what they're doing, and you are aware of what they are doing. This commitment to inclusion can show up in a lot of different ways. A lot of it is in how people are communicating. And maybe you've done some training or a workshop, or you've had, a weekend event, but who stays engaged after the training ends? Who's asking questions? Who do you notice is enrolling others and sharing the information that was in the training with people who weren't there? Who are the people who are using inclusive language, even when it's inconvenient or a little uncomfortable, that they're trying on some new ways of communicating? These are the kinds of things that often get overlooked, and so you don't want to overlook them. So, public naming with specificity, with specifics of why you are putting their name on a slide. So maybe there was an event and that your church sponsored, and so it's a good thing. And often we put slides up in our communities about, the church did this event or had this program and these 10 people worked on it, and we say thank you. Well, as it relates to inclusion, yes, you want to say thank you, but you do want to give some context. We honor how you showed up for this and give a reason, which is different than, we appreciate what you're doing and nobody really knows why. Another thing that is a little intangible is spiritual affirmation. So one of the ways you can honor and recognize the commitment that some of the people in your church have is that you can actually create some prayers or some blessings and or simple affirmations that explicitly acknowledge inclusion as sacred work. Now, you could do this just for that group, or, which I've done with one community, the people who are showing commitment, we brought them together and worked with them to create affirmations for the church. And then they got recognized because we brought them together saying, you've been modeling this. We need you to help write the affirmations about what this feels like, what it looks like, how to do it. And then when we distributed the affirmations to the rest of the church, then those 5 people who helped to form the affirmations, they were listed as the team, as part of the team that developed these affirmations. So they got honored by being invited to participate. They were affirmed by being guided, but using their ideas to create the affirmations. And then there was a public acknowledgement because they were then listed as the team. So those are ways to honor and recognize people for what they are doing. Now, the one thing that you want to be careful with any honoring and recognition is you want to be careful that you don't make it just seem transactional, or that the work they've been doing is just like a one-time thing or transactional. So, what are some things you can do that are a little bit more tangible, measurable, visible? Um, of course, on a longer term basis, you actually do want to be looking at your budget for the year and seeing where are we including budgeted items in that are related to inclusion and inclusion work, not just kind of leftovers, or we don't think about it until we need something. And then of course you can go raise the money you need, but you want to do some planning. You can obviously have physical examples or symbols of recognition. That could be art or a plaque or an annual recognition. You also can find some either local or regional, either conferences or webinars or workshops, and you can select, 3 people from your church who they've already been doing some work, and you pay for them to get some additional exposure because they are already demonstrating that they are going to be leaders on inclusion in your community. And let's see what else comes to mind. Um, Obviously, you could do stipends or love offerings, or you could tithe to people in your own community. But you've got to be really careful with that, because unless it's part of their job and it's staff, you don't want to send the message that, oh, I want you to do this because I'm going to pay you for it, right? You don't want that to be the primary message. On the other hand, you do want to have some money in the budget to support your initiative and to use to recognize people, because if it doesn't show up in your budget, it's probably not truly a priority. So I'm looking at the time. I really do want to wrap this up in the next 3 or 4 minutes. So let me let me let me share 2 or 3 really quick things. The mistakes that you can make in terms of rewarding commitment usually fall into several categories. Number one, we want to recognize people, and so we reward the people who are just creating harmony, but they're not using courage. It's like, oh yeah, they're doing the inclusion is a melting pot, and we just all want to get along, kumbaya approach. That's not going to be healthy for you over the long term. The commitment to inclusion does involve conflict and does require courage. So be careful. Are you rewarding someone who's just, making it all nice and sweet? Or are you rewarding people who are taking risks and having difficult conversations? Are you rewarding the people who just stay silent so they seem to be in line? Or are you rewarding people who are telling the truth even though it's hard? Now they're telling the truth in a respectful way, and they're pushing the envelope inside your church community in order to demonstrate spiritual principle. Are you rewarding someone who just has a big personality, or they have a lot of charisma and so people listen to what they say? Or are you rewarding people who are demonstrating accountability for long-term change? So think about what you're rewarding as you are making the decisions that you make about honoring and rewarding commitment. And finally, I think in the next few weeks, I'm going to build this out into a series and have some conversations with people about how they have rewarded people in their churches so that you can have some real life examples. And I will also be developing some ideas of short ceremonies that you could use in your community or language you could use from the platform if you wanted to reward a group of people. So basically, what you bless, you build, right? What you bless, you build. And so you want to bless the activity and the people who are demonstrating what you have set as an intention to be inclusive. And I'll be talking a lot about this topic over the next few weeks, the next couple of months. I'll be coming back to it again and again because I think it's really important and it's so perfect at the beginning of the year to begin to think about what we might want to reward in later in the year, in the summer, or at the end of the year. And before I close, I will talk just a minute about online membership in relation to recognition. Thanks for that comment/request, because I believe that it is important for us to align what we are doing with our in-person participants, members, and guests with what we do with our online or virtual attendees, participants, members, and guests. And when we talk about inclusion, there are ways to measure that and there are ways to notice what's going on. So if we have a lot of online participation, especially if it is from different geographic areas, that's a form of diversity that we want to manage, and we want not manage, that we want to notice, and that we want to call out as an example of the ways that our church is being inclusive. So when we remember that diversity is not just about race, and it's not just about, I guess, race and sexual orientation come up the most. And so it's not only that. It is about geography. It is about age and generations. It's about people with disabilities and people with different abilities. It is about gender identity. It is about languages spoken. It is about socioeconomic status and class, right? It is about so many different elements. So there are ways that that leaders in our spiritual communities can also be noticing those things with online participation and online membership, and engaging people who are online with the same ways that you engage people in person, in terms of getting input, in terms of feedback, in terms of living the principles that we teach and having them model it, like getting examples of how they model it in their lives as well. So thanks a lot for posting that, and I'm glad to speak about that. And as I'm going back to this topic on a regular basis over the next couple of months, I'm making a mental note to actually spend about 15 minutes on this topic alone. So thanks everybody for being with me today. This is The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown, and you can always find out more by visiting stainedglassspirit.net. And I will see you again next Tuesday right here at noon Mountain Time on the New Thought Media Network. Bye for now.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.